Two trucks side by side, and they tell you the same story 18 years apart. On the left, a 2007 Tacoma. Tap the frame rail behind the cab with a wrench, and it doesn't ring. It thuds. A good frame answers you back with a bright metallic note, the way a bell does. This one sounds like knocking on a wet cardboard box, and when you put a screwdriver against the seam and lean on it, the tip goes in. Not scratches, goes in. On the right, a 2023 Tundra. 31,000 miles. Still smells like a new truck inside. It is sitting there waiting for a long block because something roughly the size of a grain of sand went around the number 1 main bearing a few thousand times and turned a crankshaft journal into a rough stone. 2 different plants, 2 different decades, 1 story. Something got left behind on the assembly line, or left off it, and years later, the bill turned up in somebody's driveway. That is the thread running through everything on this list, and once you see it, you can't stop seeing it. This isn't a company that got exotic and paid for it. Nobody at Toyota tried to build a rotary engine, or a hydraulic suspension, or a gearbox with 2 clutches and a nervous breakdown. What went wrong is smaller than that, and honestly, it's worse, because the thing Toyota sells you is not clever engineering. It's a process. It's the promise that the 10,000th truck is exactly the same as the first one. By the end of this, you'll have the model years, the part, the noise it makes before it lets go, and what it costs once nobody is paying but you. And the part that should genuinely bother you isn't at the top of the list. It's what the fix quietly turned into this year. So here is the comparison I want you holding the whole way down. Every single one of these is contamination in one form or another. Debris left inside something. Coating sprayed where it shouldn't be. Protection left off where it should have gone. A material substituted for the wrong one. None of it is a design that didn't work. All of it is a design that worked fine, built slightly wrong, on a specific Tuesday, at a specific station, and then shipped 100,000 times before anybody caught it. Keep score as we go. Ask yourself on each one whether that bill landed on Toyota or landed on the owner. Because that split is not random, and by the end you'll see the pattern in it. Ranked from mildly annoying to genuinely ruinous. Starting at 15. Number 15. The 2016 through 2018 Tacoma and water in the cab. This one is small and I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but it drives people up the wall. The third brake light sits up above the back window, and the gasket behind it is thin, cheap, and shrinks. Water gets past it, runs down the inside of the rear wall, and shows up as a stain on the headliner or a damp back seat that never really dries. Owners have found it in car washes, in heavy rain, parked. It is a $2 part causing a mold problem in a $35,000 truck. Silicone and a new gasket sorts it. That is the whole item. Number 14. The 2016 and 2017 Tacoma crankshaft position sensor. Around 32,000 trucks. And the cause is almost funny in a bleak way. The crankshaft timing rotor, the toothed wheel the sensor reads to know where the engine is in its rotation, got too much anti-corrosion coating on it at the factory. Too much protection. The sensor loses the plot, the computer no longer knows where the crank is, and the engine stalls or won't start. Toyota recalled it and replaced the sensor free. Hold on to that one, because it's the purest version of the thread. Nobody designed anything badly. Somebody sprayed a good product on in a slightly too generous coat. Number 13. The Denso low-pressure fuel pump. This caught the 2017 through 2020 Tacoma and the 2019 and 2020 Tundra, along with what felt like half of everything Toyota and Lexus built in those years. The impeller inside the in-tank pump could absorb fuel, swell, deform, and bind against the pump housing. Pump quits, engine stalls, sometimes at speed. It started as a recall of roughly 690,000 vehicles in early 2020 and kept expanding until it covered millions across the two brands. Toyota replaced the pumps. I'll say the fair thing here. This was a supplier part shared across a huge slice of the industry, and Toyota was one of several manufacturers caught by it. But your truck doesn't care whose logo is on the part when it dies pulling out of a junction. Number 12. The 2018 and 2019 Tacoma Brake Master Cylinder, about 44th 121 trucks. A supplier's machining operation left some master cylinder bores without the correct chamfer, the tiny beveled lead in at the edge of a bore that lets a rubber seal slide in without being nicked. Miss the chamfer, cut the seal, and the master cylinder slowly leaks internally. What that feels like from the driver's seat is a pedal that goes further down than it used to, and then one day goes to the floor with the front brakes doing very little. Recalled and repaired free. Again, not a design problem. A machining problem. Number 11. The 2024 and 2025 Tacoma. And the screen that forgets to tell you anything. There's a software fault in the instrument panel where, at startup, the display can fail to show your speed and can fail to show the brake system and tire pressure warning lights. It's part of a broad campaign covering 591 Fiat 377 Toyota and Lexus vehicles, with the Tacoma among them, and the fix is a software update or a new panel. Worth sitting with for a second, because this is a new category of contamination. It isn't debris, it's a line of code that behaves wrong in a specific startup sequence. Same shape of failure, though. Perfectly good design, built or written slightly wrong, shipped at enormous scale. Number 10. The 2024 and 2025 Tacoma 4-wheel drive and rear brake hoses. Mud and dirt pack up inside the rear wheel, and the packed mud chews through the rear brake hose, and you lose brake fluid. If you've ever pulled the liner off a truck that lives on a farm track, you know exactly how this happens. It comes out in one solid piece, and it's dry as brick. Toyota notified the first group of affected owners in March 2025, then added roughly 116,000 more vehicles, bringing it to something like 222,000 trucks in the United States. Free repair. Number 9. The 2025 Tacoma and the front drive shaft. Only 5,160 trucks, so on volume alone, this belongs low. On severity, it does not. The ball cage inside the front drive shaft constant velocity joint was made from the wrong material by the supplier. Deform it or break it and you can lose steering rotation partway through a turn, and on full-time 4-wheel drive versions the truck can roll away while it's sitting in park if you haven't set the electronic parking brake. Toyota's own filing estimates that 16% of the affected trucks actually contain the bad part. I find that number more interesting than the population because it tells you Toyota could not identify the individual bad ones and had to recall the whole batch and inspect them one at a time. Number 8. The 2016 through 2019 Tacoma and its 6-speed automatic. This is the one that generated the most owner noise of the third generation, and it is not strictly a defect. That's what makes it worth explaining. The truck hunts, you're at a steady 45, the road tilts up a fraction, and the gearbox can't decide. It shifts, thinks better of it, shifts back. Ask for a bit of throttle to make a gap in traffic, and there's a pause first, then more downshift than you wanted. Toyota's answer, over several service bulletins, was to reflash the transmission control module. That mostly worked, which tells you what it was. The shift logic had been calibrated to sit in the tallest possible gear as much as possible, because that's how you get a fuel economy number on a test cycle. The hardware was fine. The programming was chasing a certification result instead of the road. While you're under there on any 2016 through 2018, put a light on the bottom of the timing chain cover. Early build 3.5 seep oil from that joint, and it's a sealing surface, not a gasket you can just swap. Nothing dramatic, but if the truck you're looking at has a wet film there and a seller telling you it's just a valve cover, it probably isn't. Number 7, the 2016 and 2017 Tacoma rear differential, 27732 trucks. The nuts holding the differential carrier into the axle housing could loosen because the sealing surfaces varied enough to let clamp load bleed off. Gear oil weeps out, the level drops, and the differential starts to complain. It goes howl, then whine, then it can seize, and a rear axle seizing at road speed is a very bad afternoon. You'll hear it long before it happens. A rear diff going dry doesn't stay quiet. It sings, and the pitch tracks road speed rather than engine speed, which is how you tell it from a gearbox or a wheel bearing. Toyota recalled these and, depending on how far gone it was, either resealed and retorqued the thing or replaced the internals. Number 6, the 2022 Tundra rear axle flange nuts, 46,176 trucks. Nothing was wrong with the parts. Toyota went and checked, and every component was within design specification and correctly assembled. The nuts were simply tightened to too low a torque figure when the truck was built, so they backed off over time and in a couple of cases fell off entirely and let an axle shaft start walking out of the housing. Number 5, the 2022 and 2023 Tacoma, and 381,199 trucks with welding debris in the axle. Same failure as the one above, different cause, and it is the single cleanest illustration of the thread on this whole list. When the rear axle assembly was welded, spatter, tiny beads of splattered metal, landed on the faces where the retaining nuts sit. You torque a nut down onto a bump of weld spatter, and it feels tight. The wrench says tight. What you've actually done is clamp the joint against a lump that will flatten out over the next few thousand miles, and once it flattens, your clamp load is gone. Then the nuts come loose, and then they come off, and then a piece separates from the axle, and your stability and your braking both go with it. Toyota's remedy takes about an hour. Inspect, retorque, replace anything chewed up. If you own a 2022 or 2023 Tacoma and you have never had that letter, that's your VIN check for tonight. Number 4, the 2024 Onwards Tacoma and the 8-speed automatic. Here's where it gets uncomfortable because this one is not a recall and Toyota has been careful to keep it that way. Owners started reporting failures in the first half of 2024, some of them under 1,000 miles. The descriptions repeat. Harsh jerk between gears, slipping, the truck dropping itself into neutral, stuck in a high gear, sudden loss of drive. Toyota's diagnostic bulletin points at a pressure control solenoid actuator or a torque converter clutch actuator stuck in the off position, and dealers were given a set of trouble codes. Get one of those codes and you get a new transmission. Don't get one and you get told to come back. A Toyota spokesperson described the number of affected trucks as less than thousands, and I'll be straight with you, I have no way to check that, and neither does anybody else outside the company. There's no published failure rate. What there is a steady drip of owner reports, and lawyers circling, and no dipstick on the gearbox so nobody in a driveway can even confirm the fluid level to rule it out. If you've made it this far with me, here's the useful part for you specifically. A cold first shift that's firm is normal on these. A cold first shift that thumps hard enough to rock the cab, or any moment where the truck freewheels for a beat before it catches, is not, and it is worth a dealer visit while the powertrain warranty is still doing the paying. Number 3. The 2007 through 2013 Tundra with the 5.7 V8 and the leaks nobody recalled. I like this engine. I want to say that up front because I'm about to be unkind to it. The 3URFE is one of the last genuinely overbuilt truck engines anybody sold, and a maintained one goes past 300,000 miles without the bottom end being touched. It also leaks oil from the camshaft towers. The cam tower is the casting the camshafts live in, bolted to the top of the head, sealed with a formed in-place sealant rather than a gasket you can buy in an envelope. That sealant hardens and lets go, and oil runs down the back of the head and onto the exhaust, which is why owners describe smoke and a hot oil smell at idle rather than a puddle on the drive. To reseal it, you take the top of the engine apart, including timing. Shops quote somewhere between about $1,200 and $3,500, and I've seen a dealer invoice showing 15 hours of labor for one side. One side. Toyota never issued a recall for it, so whether you paid depended entirely on whether the leak announced itself before your powertrain warranty ran out. Same trucks, same era. The secondary air injection pumps fail and put you in limp mode. Toyota did extend coverage on those to 10 years or 150,000 miles, which was the right thing to do. Outside that window, it's a couple of $1,000s for a system that only runs for the first few seconds after a cold start. Number 2. Frame rot. Tacoma, Tundra, and Sequoia, spread across 15 model years. This is the biggest single thing Toyota ever got wrong in America, and it is the reason your neighbor's 20-year-old Tacoma is either immaculate or scrap with nothing in between. The frames weren't adequately protected against corrosion. In a boxed frame, water gets inside and cannot get out, so the rust starts on the inside face and works outward. By the time you can see it from underneath, the section is already hollow. That's why the tap test matters, and it's why a shiny undercoated frame on a used truck from a salt state should make you more suspicious, not less. The scale of it is hard to take in. For the 1995 through 2000 Tacomas, Toyota put in a 15-year unlimited mileage corrosion warranty covering over 813,000 trucks and offered to buy them back at 1.5 times book value regardless of condition, which is not something a company does unless the alternative is worse. Around 150,000 trucks from 2001 to 2004 got frame replacements. Then in 2016, Toyota settled a class action over the 2005 to 2010 Tacoma, the 2007 and 2008 Tundra, and the 2005 to 2008 Sequoia at up to $3.4 billion, on the arithmetic of about $60 to inspect 1.5 million vehicles, and around $15,000 to replace each of the roughly 225,000 frames they expected to fail. There was also a separate recall of about 690,000 trucks from 2005 to 2011 for rear leaf springs that could rust through and break. Toyota admitted no wrongdoing. It just wrote the check. And if you're watching this from Arizona or Texas thinking none of that ever happened, you're not wrong. It mostly didn't, not to you. Rust Country and Sun Country own completely different trucks with the same badge on them. Number 1, the 2022 through 2024 Tundra and the engine. For 2022, Toyota did the thing nobody thought they'd do. They took out the 5.7 V8 and put in the VAW35A, a 3.4-liter twin-turbo V6 with a 10-speed behind it. More torque, better numbers on the sticker, and a big new engine plant in Alabama to build them. And the engine started coming apart. The mechanism is the same one we've been talking about all the way down. Machining debris, metal left behind from the cutting operations, doesn't get fully cleaned out of the block. Under load, it works its way to the number 1 main bearing, embeds, and starts wearing the journal. What you get in order is a knock that appears under load and then goes away. then rough running, then a hard start, then the engine shuts down, sometimes on the interstate. In May 2024, Toyota recalled 102,092 trucks and Lexus LX 600s, 2022 and 2023 model years, and the remedy was not a repair. It was a complete new engine in every one of them, which tells you how confident they were that you cannot inspect your way out of embedded debris. Then they changed the number one main bearing design, and the failures kept coming. Between April and August 2025, the warranty claims went up again. And by that October, Toyota had logged 2,604 warranty claims and 303 field reports in the United States on V35A engine failures. In November 2025, they recalled another 126,691 vehicles covering 2022 through 2024 Tundras plus Lexus LX and GX models because engines built after the supposed fix, right through to early 2024, still had debris in them and larger pieces of it. In May 2026, they added roughly another 44,000 2024 Tundras, 3 recalls, 1 defect, somewhere north of 270,000 trucks and SUVs, with over 70,000 engines already replaced. Now the hybrid. The iForce Max uses the same engine and it has been excluded from all of this. And Toyota's argument to the regulator is that if the petrol engine in a hybrid gives up, the electric motor can still move you out of traffic. Owners on the forums say they have had hybrids seize and not move at all. I don't know who's right. I lean toward thinking the exclusion is doing more work than the engineering justifies, partly because it's the same block off broadly the same line, but I want to be clear that is my read and not a finding. And here's what I honestly can't square. The official explanation is a cleaning process that didn't remove all the debris. Fine. But you don't recall 100,000 engines, change your process, and then keep building the same fault for another year without somebody checking whether the fix took. I've seen a lot of explanations offered for that online, and I don't believe any of them enough to repeat one. It has never been properly explained. That's the list. Now, the part I actually wanted to get to. Because there's a difference between a company that builds a bad part and a company that decides what it owes you afterwards, and that second decision is the one being made about your truck right now. Here's what they told you. In 2024, if your Tundra was in that recall, you were getting a new engine, not a repair, not an inspection, not a wait and see. A complete new engine, free, because the debris is inside the bearing and there is no way to look at it from the outside. Here's what's actually true as of the summer of 2026. Toyota developed a test. Dealers put a tool on your engine and measure the resonant frequency at the front of the crankshaft, which is a genuinely clever piece of engineering because a worn bearing changes how the front of that crank rings. They compared good engines against bad ones until they could tell them apart by sound. If the tool says your bearing is fine, you keep your engine. And they also pull the drive data out of your truck because if you haven't loaded it hard enough for the wear to show up yet, the test can't see anything, and in that case, they'll replace it anyway. Read that again and notice what moved. In 2024, the standard was, we cannot verify this engine is clean, so you get a new one. In 2026, the standard is, we cannot verify this engine will fail, so you keep the one you have. Do the arithmetic yourself, because the arithmetic is the whole argument. Roughly 100,000 owners under the original campaign are still guaranteed a replacement. The other 170,000 or so, the ones caught in the 2025 and 2026 expansions, now go through the listening test. A long block plus the labor to fit it is comfortably 5 figures a truck. Multiply that by the trucks that just moved from guaranteed to maybe. That is the number sitting on the other side of this decision from you. I want to be fair because the test might be excellent. Toyota says it's calibrated to err toward replacing, and acoustic wear detection is real. Established engineering, not a magic trick. If it works, it saves an enormous amount of waste, and I have no evidence in front of me that it doesn't work. But you are the one carrying the risk if it's wrong. Your engine passes the test at 40,000 miles. Your powertrain warranty ends. Your bearing fails at 90,000. And at that point, the campaign is closed, the truck is out of coverage, and the conversation you're having is not about a recall, it's about goodwill. Toyota's own line on this is that owners who experience a failure should contact their dealership. That is not a promise. That's a phone number. The lie isn't that the test is fake. The lie is the word remedy staying the same, while the thing behind it quietly changed from a new engine into an opinion about your engine. Still with me? Good. Because I want to step back from the anger for a second, since anger on its own doesn't fix anything, and it isn't really why any of this matters. A reputation is a strange kind of asset. Toyota's was built by people who mostly aren't there anymore. Over decades, one boring, competent truck at a time, by engineers who chose the conservative option again and again and got no credit for it because nothing happened. That's what reliability looks like from the outside. Nothing happening for years. And the thing about that kind of reputation is that it can be spent, not by a bad design, because a bad design is obvious and gets fixed. It gets spent by 1,000 small permissions, a cleaning step that gets 10 seconds shorter, a torque spec signed off on a Friday, a supplier substitution that passes on paper. Every one of those is defensible on its own, and together they draw down a balance that took 40 years to build, and that nobody currently employed has to personally answer for. That's why I keep going on about the boring stuff, the coating thickness, and the weld spatter and the chamfer on a bore. Those aren't trivia. Those are the whole thing. The reputation was never in the design. It was always in the discipline. And discipline is the easiest thing in the world to quietly stop doing. So here's what to actually do with all of this. If you own one of these trucks, run your VIN through the manufacturer's recall lookup or the federal one tonight. It takes half a minute and it's free. And the two most valuable open campaigns are the Tacoma axle retighten on 2022 and 2023 trucks, which is about an hour of work, and the Tundra engine campaign on 2022 through 2024, where you want to know which of the three recalls your VIN sits in, because that determines whether you're getting an engine or a listening test. If you're buying used, 3 checks in this order. Tap the frame behind the cab and along the rear rails on anything from a salt state and walk away from a thud. On a 3.5 Tacoma, look at the bottom of the timing chain cover with a light. On a 2022 or newer Tundra, ask for the service history in writing and find out whether that engine is the original one, because a replaced long block on one of these is a feature, not a defect. Listen for 3 things. A rear differential that sings with road speed, not engine speed. A knock on the twin-turbo V6 that only shows up under load and then goes quiet. A cold shift on the 8-speed hard enough to move you in the seat. And on cost, so you can plan rather than panic. Recall work is free and stays free. A cam tower reseal is $1,200 to $3,500, out of warranty, on you. A frame is around $15,000, which is why they were writing off trucks instead of fixing them. A long block is 5 figures and is currently free, and the whole point of the last 10 minutes is that the word currently is carrying weight there. Do all that, and here's what you get. Nothing. No phone call from a service advisor with that tone in their voice. No flatbed. No four-figure invoice for a leak that started 3 months before anybody mentioned it to you. Just a truck that keeps starting and a bill that never turns up, which is the most underrated thing a vehicle can give you. Now, the comments, and I want something specific from a specific group of you. If you work at a Toyota dealership or you've worked the line at San Antonio or Alabama, tell me where I got this wrong. I've built this out of recall filings, defect reports, service bulletins, and owner accounts, and every one of those is a document about a truck rather than the truck itself. If you've had the frequency tool in your hands, I want to know what it's actually flagging in the bay, and whether the trucks it passes are the ones you'd pass. If you've pulled one of these engines down, I want to know what the bearing looked like. Correct me in public. I'd rather be corrected than confident. And everybody else, tell me where you're watching from and what your roads do to a truck. Coastal, salt belt, gravel, or somewhere it never rains. The same Tacoma has 2 completely different lives depending on which of those you're in, and reading those replies side by side is genuinely one of the better parts of doing this. If this was useful, subscribing helps, and I'll tell you what I'm chewing on next rather than promising a date. I left something out of this one on purpose. These transmissions have no dipstick. You cannot check your own fluid. And the more I dig into why that decision keeps getting made right across the industry and not just here, the less I like where the reasoning goes. I haven't got to the bottom of it yet. When I do, you'll hear it. Until then, go tap your frame. It costs you nothing, and it's the most honest answer you'll get all week.